What if there was a branching in the future of Westeros after Daenerys burned King's Landing? Darkness falls. A new winter rises from the north. Hey everyone, this is TH Stories 80 where we narrate fanfiction audiobooks. Now we begin chapter 1 of A Repeating Song. Let's dive in. Aegon, White Harbor. It had been nearly 6 years since Aegon had stepped onto the main dock at White Harbor, or rather, what used to be White Harbor. 6 years had passed since he last set foot in the north after the burning of King's Landing and what would later be whispered among the remnants of the northern houses as the Great Betrayal. Even now, after so many years, people remained divided over who had betrayed whom on that fateful day. In the north, it was widely accepted that the man proclaimed by the Dragon Queen as Aegon Targaryen was the betrayer. In the south, they had their villain instead, Sansa Stark, the usurper who burned. To Aegon, however, there had never been any doubt about where the fault lay. He lifted his head and stared up at the grey clouds as snow drifted down onto his bearded face. Closing his eyes, he could still hear her voice, the voice of the one he had betrayed, clear and vivid at the back of his mind, as though they had spoken only yesterday. He remembered the Dothraki guards standing watch outside Sansa's chambers, while the rest of the Queen's army, both Dothraki and Unsullied, scoured the north in search of Arya and Bran. In the present, his boots crunched against a thick layer of snow coating the wooden dock, but his thoughts remained firmly in the past. He recalled the moment the two Dothraki guards, one of whom he would later learn had spoken openly of wanting to rape the lady behind the door, pushed the wooden door open. Sansa stood with her back to him. Winterfell, 6 years ago, 3 months after the burning of King's Landing. Aegon called for her, but she never turned around. He closed the door behind him and took a few steps forward before demanding to know why she had betrayed his confidence. He asked why she had told Tyrion the secret she had sworn never to reveal, that he was the true-born son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. Sansa offered no answer. She continued staring out the window, her gaze fixed on the distant red leaves of the heart tree in the Godswood. Aegon pressed on, his voice tightening as he explained that the northern lords had been ordered to come to Winterfell to bend the knee. They refused their queen's command, he told her. They refused my order as well, Sansa. He warned her that if she did not intervene, she would be executed for treason against the rightful queen of the Seven Kingdoms. His voice broke as he begged her to bend the knee, insisting that Daenerys would send her into exile with Arya and Bran. The three of you would live, he pleaded. He repeated that if Sansa continued to defy the Dragon Queen, she would be made an example. Proof of what awaited the North should it continue to rebel against the Iron Throne. Do you know what this means? Aegon cried, raising his left arm as he stepped toward her. Sansa, you... She seeks to blame me for her mistakes, Sansa cut in coldly. Aegon halted, his outstretched arm frozen inches from her shoulder. She seeks to blame me for creating a wall between you and her, Sansa continued evenly. She seeks to blame me for Tyrion and Varys' deaths, and she seeks to blame me for the burning of King's Landing. She told him that Bran had seen what Daenerys had done as she flew Drogon over the capital. Arya had confirmed it when she returned to Winterfell, ash and blood covered, after riding out of the city as it burned. Sansa's voice sharpened. Daenerys chose her own path. She chose to burn the city. She chose to burn Varys. And she chose to burn Tyrion. Her back still turned, Sansa went on. She made that choice alone, and she has you wrapped around her finger. Before Aegon could respond, Sansa scoffed. You and the dragon invader will never find Arya and Bran again. Sansa, please. She glanced over her shoulder, blue Tully eyes studying him for a long moment before she looked away again. Her attention returned to the window. Ask the question you came to ask, she murmured. Ask it again, and I will answer you. Only you. Why? Aegon pleaded. Why did you break your oath to me? Fear, Aegon. He stiffened as he stared at the back of her head. Sansa. He wanted to ask her not to call him by that name. He wanted to remind her that he was still Jon. He wanted to tell her that Daenerys could change, that she had a plan to make the world better, that she would atone for what was done in King's Landing. But no words came. You feared her? He thought. Before he could insist that there was nothing to fear, that all she had to do was bend the knee, Sansa spoke again. Fear, she repeated quietly. I saw it on Tyrion's face before you led the northern army south. If your queen's former hand lived in terror of her, what chance did the rest of us have? Her voice hardened. I told you I would not be like father. I will not let a misplaced sense of honor guide my actions when my family is in danger. I warned you that the Dragon Queen was a threat to us all. She reminded him that she had sworn to keep his secret because they were family. But then I saw how afraid Tyrion was, she continued. So I asked him what he would do if there was someone better suited to lead us. Son, the North remembers Aegon, Sansa whispered. Aegon pressed his lips together. The Jon Snow I once knew died the moment he bent the knee, again, to the queen who burned innocence in King's Landing. She looked back at him once more. You are Aegon the Seventh of House Targaryen now. Please, Sansa, Aegon begged. Please, just bend the knee. He grabbed her arm and spun her around roughly so they faced one another. I managed to convince her to. You know nothing, Aegon, Sansa whispered. His eyes widened as memories of another red-haired woman flashed through his mind. He turned away briefly before looking back at her. Bran has already seen what will come, Sansa continued. It took everything I had to convince Arya to take him where he needed to go, and Arya has her own path to follow. She exhaled slowly. Your queen has already made her decision. She will burn me. There is no exile. There never was. No, Aegon insisted weakly. I convinced her to. You should go, Aegon. Jon, he corrected hoarsely. I'm always Jon. His heart shattered at the look she gave him, a look that made it clear she would never kneel before the Mad King's daughter. He died, Sansa whispered, meeting his gaze. I told you, the Jon Snow I knew is gone. She turned away. Aegon stood there, anguish etched across his face. A heartbeat later he turned, shuffled toward the door and left the room. That was the last time he would ever speak to Sansa alone. White Harbor, now. Aegon lowered his head, then opened his eyes and glanced over his shoulder at the 50 Unsullied and their horses gathered along the dock. He turned back toward the land ahead and saw nothing but ruined buildings buried beneath snow, with the bodies of the long dead left exposed to the elements. Their remains were only partially decomposed, preserved by the sudden cold that had swept in several days after the execution of Sansa Stark and the gutting of Winterfell. Even the crypts had not been spared. The Dothraki had rampaged through the burial grounds of the ancient Starks on the Dragon Queen's orders, despite her nephew's desperate pleas to let the dead rest. Daenerys had sought to crush the very name of the house the North had followed without question. Aegon could only watch helplessly as one northern lord, one northern house after another fell. He was her prisoner just as much as he was her lover and her nephew. He could feel the hatred and sense of betrayal radiating from the Northerners who had been held hostage by the Dragon Queen in King's Landing, the same men who had followed him south to witness the burning of the city. The Dothraki looked down on him with open disdain, while the Unsullied regarded him with emotionless indifference upon his return to King's Landing. Daenerys' wrath had culminated in a massacre that extinguished many once great northern houses. Manderley, Dustin, Reed, Talhart, Glover, and countless others. The North had always been considered barren. Now, it truly was. Only a handful of people remained. Most survivors had fled the burning of White Harbor, the destruction of the Neck, and the torching of countless other strongholds, traveling south where they settled over the following years. And now, Aegon was back in the North once more. He mounted his horse as the Unsullied climbed onto theirs. One of them guided his mount closer to Aegon's side. It is summer and still cold, the Unsullied observed in an even, accented voice while gazing up at the grey sky. Aegon did not respond. A vast emptiness hollowed out the pit of his soul. He had been given the chance to kill Daenerys after the destruction of King's Landing. Even Tyrion had warned him. She will come after your sisters, Jon, and you know they will not bend a knee. Those had been Tyrion's final words before he cast aside the pin of the hand of the Queen and was publicly burned alive. Aegon had known Tyrion was right. Sansa, Arya and Bran would never kneel. He had known Daenerys would demand retribution for Sansa's defiance. He had known his family was in danger, and yet he had still loved Daenerys Targaryen, his lover, his aunt, his queen. The dagger had rested in its sheath at his hip. All he had needed to do was distract her and plunge it into her chest while they were alone. He had not done it, and now the realm, along with the free cities and much of Essos, was paying the price. Daenerys wanted to rule the world, and nothing remained to stop her. Aegon forced the memories aside and turned to the Unsullied beside him, the one who called himself Red Might. The Queen's Red Priestess spoke endlessly of a great other in the north, Aegon remarked. It could have somehow stopped the ravens from Castle Black from reaching King's Landing. The White Walkers were killed by the Queen, Red Might replied as the group urged their horses up the dock and onto the snow-covered streets of the ruined city. Aegon glanced at him. He wanted to argue, to say it had not been the Queen who slew the Night King, but a Stark, Arya. When all seemed lost, she had saved them all. When Daenerys proclaimed herself the victor over the Night King, the Northerners in King's Landing had erupted in outrage. Aegon had tried to calm them, had tried to shield them from the Queen's fury. She had answered by unleashing the Unsullied upon them. And I had to watch again, Aegon thought. He exhaled slowly, his breath fogging the air as he looked back to the sky. It was meant to be summer. The south should have been hot and heavy with humidity. Instead, the months following Winterfell's destruction had grown steadily colder. Days shortened, and grey skies spread over King's Landing and over all of Westeros. Even the sun's light was dim, as though the world itself had been swallowed by shadow. In recent months, snow had begun falling as far south as Sunspear, Meereen, the Free Cities, Astapor, Volantis, and beyond. Then, only a month earlier, Red Priests from Volantis had arrived at Blackwater. Their chief priestess, Kinvara, had requested an audience with Daenerys, who had just returned from conquering Qarth. Kinvara spoke of the Great Other and warned that it was growing stronger. She claimed the White Walkers had merely been weapons of an older age, and that the Great Other was now forging new instruments of ice and darkness. She proclaimed it to be darkness itself, and insisted that only the right of R'hllor could defeat it. To that end, the great Temple of R'hllor in Volantis pledged all its acolytes, its Red Priests, and the Red Hand. Kinvara named Daenerys Azor Ahai, the princess that was promised, and declared Drogon to be her lightbringer. Soon after, Daenerys sent Aegon north with an escort of Unsullied to investigate Castle Black, from which no word had come for months. Their port of call was White Harbor, as Eastwatch by the Sea had been destroyed when the wall fell 6 years earlier. Meanwhile, the Red Priests were dispatched to scour the lands north of King's Landing, charged with destroying the weirwoods, trees Kinvara claimed were the eyes and ears of the Great Other. Aegon had protested. He had been overruled. The only reason he had not joined the pyres was because the Queen had shielded him. He released a weary breath as he and the Unsullied broke into a gallop, leaving the docks behind. The north dredged up memories of his betrayal and his cowardice. He could not betray his queen, his love, his aunt. He simply could not. Even after the fall of the north, he still loved her, and the shame of it weighed heavily on him. He longed to beg forgiveness from those he had betrayed. The thought of passing Winterfell on the road to Castle Black made his throat tighten, and he wondered if the Queen had sent him north for that very reason, to remind him of her power, of the whispers that named her a tyrant. House Stark, one of the oldest houses in Westeros, had fallen. No one was safe. His duty was to protect the realm from tyranny. Yet his love had stayed his hand. His love had killed his duty, and what remained of his family had paid the price. As Aegon and the Unsullied rode on, none of them noticed the fog gathering behind them minutes later. They did not see the waters around the docks, and the ship began to freeze, though they felt the wind sharpen and the snowfall intensify. Once they were out of sight, some of the bodies near the dock stirred, eyes snapped open, glowing bright blue. The dead rose on unsteady feet and began moving toward the cobbled streets of the ruined city. Below deck, the ship's crew sat around the table, drinking and laughing when an uneasy silence fell over them. One by one, they turned toward the stairs leading down. Heavy footsteps thudded against the wood. The crew seized whatever weapons they could before freezing in place at the sight of a beautiful woman descending into the hold. Her hair was red, her skin pale blue, and her body encased in black armor crusted with ice. Their gazes drifted to the sword in her right hand, the pommel and crossguard black as coal, the blade resembling blue crystal with edges too sharp to fully discern. It was unlike steel, Valyrian steel, or dragon glass. Her bright blue eyes fixed on them as the water around the ship continued to freeze outward. No one heard the screams from below deck as the men were slaughtered. When it was over, the armored woman stood amid pooled blood and tilted her head. Without speaking, she commanded the dead to rise, and they rose with shining blue eyes. To be continued.